Hey everybody, I'm Pastor Callie with Elevation Church, and we have been going through this series called Managing Your Internal World. And I actually love the fact that we've been going through this series for January, because I think so often we think that when we change a number on our calendar that our life is just going to instantly change. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I have so much hope for this year. I have so much hope for 2021. I think God is going to do radical breakthrough in people's lives, and I think it's going to be amazing. But let's be real. No resolution is automatically going to fix what you have no idea is broken in the first place. And there is such a level of preparation that we should have and responsibility to ourselves in our own life that we need to prepare to be able to receive that breakthrough that God so desperately wants for us and has for us. Because he loves us and he's so gracious to allow us to partner with him in these breakthroughs. I actually find it interesting too that I was specifically asked to speak on this message because, as many of you know, and I'm not quiet about this, in the season that I'm at, I need counseling and I actually need medication to help me manage my internal world. And I really struggle with having my internal world managed without Lexapro. And I know I've said that a lot, especially in these last few times that I've had a chance to talk, but I still feel like there are so many people that are wrapped up in this shame and guilt cycle that I want to say this over and over, and I want to pound that rock till every single person who can hear my voice breaks out of that guilt. Because there is absolutely no shame and guilt if you need help in this season to manage your internal world. There is no shame in it. And the only struggle that comes is when we take those struggles and those problems that we're having and we shove them down and we put them in the dark places of our hearts and we keep them stuffed because we're so feeling condemned that we have them. And that's when they have the greatest influence on you. When we take those struggles and we pull them out to the light and we see them for what they are, that's when we can heal. So I just want, first of all, to have all shame, all guilt broken off of you. If you've been watching this series and been going, my internal world hasn't been managed well, that's okay. That's okay. Let's take a step, even if it's a baby step, to get healing and find peace and break off that shame. The Bible actually tells us that we're called to bear one another's burdens. So I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to be an inconvenience to somebody, so I don't want to share what's going on because it's going to inconvenience someone. But we have a biblical mandate to bear each other's burdens. And you know what? Sometimes we are inconvenient to people, and that's okay. We're all in that season sometimes. For example, if I'm cooking dinner and I'm focused and I'm trying to get everything prepared to come out at the same time and my daughter asks me for help on her homework, that's inconvenient. She is not an inconvenience, but that is inconvenient to me. But I'm so happy to stop what I'm doing and help her because I love the fact that she's bettering herself. So stop worrying about being an inconvenience and allow the church and healthy community around you and professionals around you to do what they're supposed to do and help you bear your burdens. It's really okay because you're worth it. You're worth it and you have so much value that it's okay to be an inconvenience sometimes. And we all find ourselves in that spot. But honestly, before we can even talk about what we have going on, we have to be aware of what's going on under the surface. And in our rushed, fast-paced society, it's really hard sometimes to be aware of what's going on in our society. So one of the things that we have to practice on doing is being present in the moment. Stopping, pausing. You'll often hear it referred to as grounding sometimes if you need to. Pause, take a moment. Feel, if you have a table in front of you, feel the texture of the table. If you're sitting down, feel the chair under you. Take note of your surroundings and then calmly take note of the feelings that are going on inside of you without letting those feelings overtake you. An example of this for me personally is I had just gotten done with a counseling session where I had had a really cool breakthrough. I had just addressed something that was really hard in my childhood, and I had found a lot of peace in that counseling session. And then right after that, I had to go grocery shopping with my husband, Aaron, and my daughter. And it was a busy day. The grocery shopping, the store was busy, and my daughter was bopping around between both of us, and my husband and I were both looking for stuff, and there was just a lot going on. And I had this moment where I looked at a shelf, and I realized I needed something, and I saw all these people around in that area, and I realized that the thought pattern that was trying to spin up in me was just trying to stay out of their way. And in that moment, it felt so much bigger. I realized I've lived so much of my life just trying to stay out of people's way and just trying to stay in the background so I don't get in the way of other people. And so much of my operating system had been taken up with trying to figure out ways to just stay in the background and not bother people. And in that moment, I realized that it was okay for me to exist. And that might sound like something that's really weird, but when I really stopped and looked at what was going on underneath the emotions, underneath the feeling fatigued and just feeling overwhelmed at that moment, I realized I needed to give myself permission to exist. Obviously, I'm not going to be rude and push my way and get what I want, but I have a right to be there just like anybody else does. And I'm not invisible. People can see me just as much as I can see them. We can work together to stay out of all of each other's way. And if I have to inconvenience someone for a second, that's actually okay. One of the other things that would happen a lot is when I was checking out in line and I would go to pay, I would get so worried about hurrying up so that I'm not inconveniencing the person behind me that I would forget the number for my debit card. And which obviously didn't help the anxiety. Once I started forgetting it, then I drew a blank, and then I worried I was taking too long, and so on and so forth. And I realized that if I take a second to just breathe, that half a second that I needed to take wasn't going to ruin anybody's life. And it was okay to take that moment. And in our lifestyle of electronics and technology and fast-paced stuff, we forget to take those little moments. We actually, again, the Bible talks to us about living out of a place of peace, not living out of a place of rushing and always reacting instead of responding. And that's what we end up getting in the habit of doing. We end up getting this habit of we have to react to everything that's going on because there's so much being thrown at us at once. And we have to breathe and learn how to respond. And part of that is not letting our minds get so taken up by all the little worries. Matthew 6:34. We've all heard it. We've heard it so many times probably. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. When we're so worried about things all the time, and not just worried about the moment, but worried about the what ifs and what's gonna come and how can I get ready for this, and it takes us out of that place of rest, and it takes us out of the ability to have those mindful moments where we're aware of what's going on. For me personally, one of the things that really can spin up the anxiety is my fear of becoming fatally ill or getting in an accident and dying tomorrow. And it's not that I have any less faith of where I'll be when I die. I know I'm going to go to heaven. I know I will be okay. But I'm a mom now. And when that happened, that changed my life. And years ago, I was actually suicidal. And I didn't I didn't have value for my life, and I had a lot of suicidal thoughts because I was feeling hopeless and feeling really stuck. And then I got a lot of inner healing, and I got past that phase of my life, and I dealt with the issues that were there, that were coming to the beliefs and the lies that I was stuck and there was no hope. And then I became a mom, and instead of dismissing my life, I started fearing for my life, because now I have this person in my arms that I love dearly, and what's going to happen to her? I grew up without a healthy mom. I don't want that for her. I don't want her to grow up without a mom. So the anxiety would spin up so bad on that. And I would start to worry, well, what's going to happen to my family? And in that moment, we have wisdom. We can stop and go, you know what, I should probably have a will made up. I should probably get some of my effects in order, and that's okay. But when we start trying to control everything to manage that fear, that's when those little what ifs start to hurt you. Did you know that worry is actually a waste of your life? If I spent my entire time worrying about dying, and I'm actually more snippy with my daughter because I'm scared all the time and I'm worried all the time, I'm wasting the time that I have with her. Worry is a waste of your life. And worry is actually a waste of your imagination. Our imagination is supposed to paint us a picture of peace and hope, a bright future. We have a God-ordained imagination to continue to paint hope for our future, and we absolutely allow it to be corrupt when we use that for worry. And then life gets really heavy, and it feels really heavy. Matthew 11:28 through 30 says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. My yoke is comfortable and my burden is light." We're not supposed to be living with the heavy burden of worry. We're supposed to be living in the truth that God has us no matter what. We're supposed to be giving that to God and resting in the fact that we don't have to worry about everything. Proverbs 3:5 through 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths." There are so many things in our life that we can't control. That's just a reality. There's so much in our life that we can't control. And like I said before, yes, we have responsibility to try to seek healing. We have responsibility to live out as healthy of a lifestyle as we can. But there's a lot of stuff that's out of our control. And for me, there was so much fear at first, realizing that things were out of my control. And it was terrifying to think about. So yeah, there's some fear in realizing that you're not in control. But there's so much peace in embracing that you're not in control. And when we can realize that God will make straight our paths, and we can just let go, there's so much peace in it. Trying to cling to all those worries, trying to manage your life and control your life in a way that you pretend like you have control of everything, is actually like trying to hold on to dry sand. And you're grabbing it on tight, and you're trying to manipulate your hands in a way to keep all that sand in, and you can't. It just keeps slipping through your fingers. And then as you see the sand slip through your fingers, you spin up even more because you're watching it slip through, and you're trying harder and harder to hold on to it. But just let go. Just let go of the sand and find that peace. And find that rest in knowing that there are steps you can take, and there's stuff outside your control, and that's actually okay. And if that realization scares you, I challenge you to stop and face that fear And don't try to hide or run for that fear or deny it. Face it and go, this really scares me. This actually really scares me. And sit with that fear until you find peace. Because until we acknowledge our feelings, they're going to continue to demand to be felt. And another thing that's outside of our control is, and we forget about this a lot, I think, is other people's internal worlds. And when we start thinking that we can manage other people's internal worlds, we start picking up offenses. And we start getting bitter and we start trying to control more things, and that actually steals from our peace. Did you know that your emotions are your responsibility and no one else's? You can't manage their internal world. They can't manage yours. So, for example, my husband, he has this incredibly endearing and terribly frustrating aspect about him, where the second his head hits the pillow at night, he's gone. He's out. He's asleep. And we've learned very early in our marriage that if we start fighting late in the evening, we need to just kind of shelve that till the morning, because if we try to hash it all that night when we've had a really busy day and we're cranky, it just doesn't get us anywhere. So there was a night, I remember we laid down after we had a fight or intense fellowship, if that's a cleaner Christian term for the fact that we were at each other's throats that night. And he laid down and he fell asleep. And I was laying there like seething mad, like, how could you sleep after you said this or did this, or I don't even remember what it was about. It shows how important it was. But I was just mad. And I was laying there angry. And then this thought hit me. He's sleeping and I'm not. And I know that sounds silly, but he was the one that was finding peace. I wasn't. And that actually wasn't his fault that I didn't find peace. That was on me. And beyond that, if I stayed up all night because I was mad, and then the next morning we weren't able to have a clear conversation with each other because I was cranky, that would actually be my fault too, no matter what was said or done to begin with, because I wasn't managing my internal world. So your bitterness and your anger toward people is just stealing your own peace. It's not stealing theirs, and that's your responsibility to deal with. And when you realize that, there's a lot of peace. And for that night, I was able to shelve that anger, not stuff it. Stuffing something else. Stuffing is saying, I'm never going to address it. We're just going to stuff it down. It didn't happen. I was able to shelve it so that the next day when we were in a clearer mind, we talked about it. And it went really well. But you can't do that unless you have confidence in yourself. And you can't acknowledge the fact that you can make mistakes too unless you're confident in yourself. And you're able to find that peace. And a way to find that peace is just to realize that your love and your value has nothing to do with what other people think or how other people feel about you in the moment. The fact that my husband was mad at me didn't change the fact that I'm still valuable. And that's where it helps to have community around you to remind you of the fact that you're loved and valuable. But no matter how big your house is, no matter who you are, what you've done, that doesn't change your value and the fact that you are so loved by God and you are so cared for. Psalm 136:26 says, "Give thanks to the God of heaven, for his faithfulness is everlasting." When you truly realize how everlasting his love and his faithfulness is to you, you can acknowledge the fact that you make mistakes, but you're not a mistake. If you make a mistake, that doesn't make you a mistake. And we so often are guarded and take offense with people and want to fight over things because we're so afraid that if we admit to our mistakes, that makes us a mistake. And nothing changes his love and his faithfulness to you. It's everlasting. Example, I had a friend named Pat. She's an amazing woman from the UK. And we were in Redding, California, and we had just moved there. And it's a city. And for me, I'm used to driving in smaller towns, like country towns. And we had moved to the city. I had never been there before we moved. And I was just having a really hard time not being afraid of driving around places. And I was sitting with my friend Pat over a cup of coffee, and she was telling me about how, because they drive on the opposite side of the road in the UK, she was struggling with driving too. And it actually made her slow down, and she had to really physically force herself to think about what lane to stay in when she was taking turns. And that was making people honk at her and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, well, how do you remain calm when people are honking at you and you're slowing down and traffic is getting mad at you and they're giving less than pleasant gestures to you? And she gave me this phrase that I'm never going to forget. She said, when people get mad at me like that, I take a breath and I think, if you knew what I was overcoming right now, you would be so proud of me. Here's the reality. Nobody knows truly what you're overcoming. And you don't know what they're overcoming. We're all on our own journey. And if people offend you or disrespect you, it's okay to have healthy confrontation out of love and respect. But that's different than holding in angerness and bitterness, because you can't expect them to know what you're going through. And we can't know what they're going through. We have to give each other grace in the process and realize that other people are in process just as much as you are. And just because you're not aware of it doesn't mean it's not happening underneath the surface. I actually used to be terribly afraid of gossip and what people were going to say about me behind my back. But mostly that's just because I didn't have confidence in myself. And I really had to stop and realize that what people say about me doesn't change my identity. And I had to give them grace to be in their own process. And again, I don't stuff it. If I'm truly angry or I truly have an issue with something, I can go to somebody in love. But if a person's not at a place to receive from me, or it's not really a big deal, I can be okay. And being okay doesn't mean I go tell 10 other friends and not that person. Let's just clear that up. I hear a lot of people go, well, I just took it to God, and I'm okay about it. Well, if you're okay about it, then why are you telling me? But if you really know somebody's not at a place to receive from you, you can breathe and go, you know what? My identity doesn't really change from what this person has to think about me, and I don't know what's going on in their internal world. So bless them, and I hope they find their healing and their peace, and I'm just going to live my life, and it's going to be okay. Psalm 109:4 says, in return for my love, they act as my accusers, but I am in prayer. Proverbs 19:11 says, a person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook offense. Again, overlook doesn't look like stuffing. If you're still finding anger and bitterness in that, you need to deal with that. But if you're truly okay and you're comfortable with who you are, it's a lot easier to overlook offense. And finally, the last thing about gossip and worrying about what people think about you is if you want to have grace with people, let's be real. We've all said stupid stuff sometimes. And when we're behind closed doors, whether it's out of anger or some kind of emotion, or whether we just misspoke and we were misunderstood, we've all said dumb things sometimes that we regretted later. And a lot of the times when people speak and say things about you, they don't actually mean it. They're just speaking out of their own wounding. So don't let those little fences steal your peace. Because in the end, like I said, you can't manage other people's worlds. Ecclesiastes 7:21 through 22 says, "Don't pay attention to every word people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you. For you know in your heart that many times you yourself have cursed others." We just need to be confident in who we are, to not let the gossip get to us, to believe that other people are in their own process, and to have grace for each other and ourselves. And when we have grace for each other and we have grace for ourselves, where we are in the process, realizing that we're loved, realizing that we're valued, realizing that we truly do have a firm foundation to stand on, that's when your inner world can have more peace. So stop trying to control everything. Stop trying to manage other people's internal worlds. And just refocus on you for a season. Take a breath. Look at your surroundings. Take note of what's going on inside of you when you snip at somebody, or when you have a response that comes out of you that you know is a reaction and not a response to something. You can feel that if you take note of it. You can feel when you're reacting. So when that happens, pause and take a moment and see where you're at in your own process for that. And may the year 2021 be an amazing and abundant year of breakthrough for you, as you both partner with God in His breakthrough and you take responsibility in your own internal world, partnering with Him to build something beautiful for 2021. And with that, as we continue into our journey of 2021, I also want to thank everybody and just take a moment to thank you for how generous you've been to our church, and to all the staff and to all the people that are here. Your generosity, not just in giving, but the encouragement that I've heard come out of people and how you've built each other up. And even just listening to these messages and allowing these messages to help you, I just want to thank you for that. But here at Elevation, we also believe that giving financially is a part of worship. So we have several ways for you to be able to give as we wrap up here. First way is if you go to www.elevationchurchwisconsin.com/giving. We have some online options. We also have an app. It's Elevation Church Wisconsin. You actually have to write out the whole word Wisconsin instead of doing Elevation Church WI. That won't get you to the right app. So Elevation Church Wisconsin, we have an option on there to give, and it also gives you a lot of updates about what's going on at church. You could also mail in a check to 2605 South Oneida Street, Suite 123, Green Bay, Wisconsin, 54304. Or better yet, you can just come on a Sunday at 9 a.m. here and be a part of community and give your offering. And obviously, if you're still quarantining and you're still sheltering in place, you're still a part of the body. I encourage you, if you're doing that, reach out in other ways, reach out electronically. Technology can be a curse, but it's also a huge blessing. So allow those avenues that are available to you to keep you connected with community, because community is such a valuable thing when it comes to managing our internal world. It's the thing that reminds us to get back on track when we're starting to get off track. So whether you can come on Sunday morning or you can plug in electronically through technology, plug in somehow. And with that, bless you. May your year 2021 be full of abundance. Thanks.